everyone, and welcome to Brands Hatch. After 4 years of abstinence, finally we are back in the UK, ready to get racing, or rather, first of all, we've got to get the qualifying started. And it's going to be very exciting because we're not on the short racetrack, on the so-called Indy circuit. We are racing here on the Formula One parcours. So it's the real Grand Prix parcours, and we're really getting excited. So let's get started with the qualifying.
Thank you very much, Verena. Here we go then. It is the full circuit, as Verena has indicated. The 3.9-kilometre circuit, which opened, of course, back in the 1950s. Some 9 turns. 6 of them right-handers, 3 of them are left-handers. It's a new challenge for all of our DTM stars who are about to go out on track and get qualifying underway to set the grid for race number 1, which comes up a little bit later this afternoon. We are live from Brands Hatch. We're back in the UK. Welcome. The sun is shining. Some of the younger fans are taking on necessary fluids, and we are about to get this very short, sharp qualifying session underway. So all the drivers have merely 20 minutes to set the grid for what will be race number 1. The entire front of the Philipp Eng car, as you can see, is off the machine at the moment. Philipp Eng, one of the rookies into the championship this year. There's Robin Freins, the Netherlands-based racer that drives the number 4 car for Audi. Who will be the manufacturer that comes out on top this weekend? Of course, Mercedes-Benz are having a stellar performance in the Drivers' Championship at the moment, with 2 British drivers, P1 and P2, them being Gary Paffett and one Mr. Paul de Resta. But Robin Freins then in the number 4 Audi, one of the rookies into the DTM this year. The DTM lap record on the Indy circuit was held by Miguel Molina, who of course now races GTs. Paul de Resta actually is the most winning driver here at Brands Hatch, having taken 2 wins. And Audi and Mercedes have split it because they have 4 wins each. So what can BMW do to set that record straight? All of those records are, of course, on the Indy circuit. We are on the big, long circuit. And having driven the track yesterday, well, it's very challenging. Augusto Farfus, the BMW driver, set the pace in free practice, as you can see. Robin Freins, who we saw just a few moments ago, was second fastest. Then it was Nico Müller, Daniel Juncadella, Pascal Wehrlein, Edo Mortara, Lucas Auer, Gary Paffett, René Rast and Marco Wittmann. But do not read too much into the times from free practice and who did what in free practice, because what we do know from DTM is that if you do read too much into that, you do so at your peril, because qualifying is a completely different story. We are but a few minutes away from the lights going green, and there is the man that's P2 in the Drivers' Championship at the moment, Paul de Resta, then former Formula One star, top DTM driver, and of course TV analyst as well, adds to his skill set as Nico Müller makes his way down the pit lane. The old mans of motor racing, they are here in full effect. To Timo Glock, and he is the one that's used that expression, old mans of DTM racing. Boy, he still knows how to drive a car, and he's 3rd in the Drivers' Championship at the moment on 101 points, trailing Paul de Resta and Gary Paffett. There is the Augusto Farfus car, the Brazilian driver who was fastest in the free practice session. What will he be able to achieve in the 20 minutes of hot rock qualifying to come around this 3.9-kilometre circuit here at Brands Hatch? As I mentioned, there are 9 turns, 6 right, 3 left, and boy, it's such an undulating circuit. Going into Paddock Hill Bend, it's like jumping off a cliff. And when you bear in mind that the entry into Paddock Hill Bend comes off the back of one of the DRS zones here at Brands Hatch, that's going to be a really exciting place during the race this afternoon. Cars queued up in the pit lane. It all goes quiet just before we have 45 seconds or so before the light turns green, and the phenomenal V8s will roar into life and set their times for the grid for this afternoon. Through the legs of one of the engineers then, we look at the Timo Glock car, Timo backstage. Alongside me, delighted to welcome top motor racing individual Brian Oliver. Here at Brands Hatch, the sun is shining, DTM cars on the long GP circuit. What's not to like?
Oh, absolutely. It's a beautiful day here at Brands Hatch. Unlike yesterday, obviously monsoon conditions here, but it looks like the track's dried out very nicely today. boiling hot sunshine out there, perfect conditions.
The point you make about the track having dried out, of course it has as the lights go green and Mike Rockefeller flings out the back end of the car and makes his way out of the pit lane. You're absolutely right, the track is bone dry. However, if you go offline or you go onto the grass, because Brands Hatch is very much an old school circuit. One of its appeals is the fact that it hasn't got acres of tarmac runoff area like some
Absolutely.
other racing circuits. If you do go offline, you get onto the grass, I bet you that's still damp. And that
Absolutely.
could bite you and bite you very hard. Don't expect that during qualifying, but perhaps when it comes to the race this afternoon, who knows? Nico Muller is on his way out. Here comes Philip Eng. The front of the car is on the car now. Here comes Timo Glock, and we look at the back end of one of the Audis making their way out of the garage. So Timo Glock tiptoes his way down Paddock Hill Bend. It's here where you really feel like you're going off a cliff edge, heading up towards Druids, Hailwood Hill. Timo Glock then, 84 races, 5 wins, 13 podiums, 5 pole positions. Makes his way down now towards the Graham Hill Bend, which is the left-hander here at Brands Hatch, where the cars will run out wide on the exit of that. Making his way through Graham Hill Bend along the Cooper Straight now before the left-hander, which takes you onto the GP circuit. And up towards Hawthorne Hill, which is where the cars will go right now. This sighting lap very much for the drivers as we look there at the RMG team principal, Stefan Reinhold, on the pit wall. Interestingly, René Rast then deciding not to go out quite yet, nor to the BMW driver, Marco Wittmann, who, of course, took his first home race at Nuremberg, the Norris Ring circuit this year. So, just as I mentioned it, René Rast does come out, so too does Jamie Green, and Robin Freins is making his way down the pit lane as well. So, 20 minutes, and the 20 minutes go very, very quickly. Brian, what can we expect? Well, we can expect 2 runs from the drivers, can't we? They'll go out, do their early runs. Interestingly, last time out, Gary Paffett setting the quickest time during the first part of the qualifying session. So they'll go out, do their early runs, come in, change the tyres, go out and do another run. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the aforementioned rain that we had earlier on yesterday, the track is in a very green state still, and inevitably the track is going to get quicker as qualifying proceeds. And although it's a very short qualifying session, I imagine they're going to want to get a banker lap in nice and early. But it's those last few minutes of qualifying when everything's up to temperature, the track's getting quicker, that's when we're going to see the times coming in, I expect.
We have had 2 free practice sessions crammed into Saturday morning already. So as we're on board and running on board with Gary Paffett as he goes past the Robin Freins car, 10 races for Gary Paffett, and 3 victories of those 10 races this year, and finds himself at the top of the points chart at the moment. Been on the podium 6 times, and he weaves from side to side then as he makes his way towards the Hawthorne Bend, which you can see coming up now, the right-hander, which is actually turn number 5 here at Brands Hatch, around the Hawthorne Bend. And it's the Derek Milner straight that you're on now, the short blast, if you like, of absolute flat out before heading into Westfield, and then, of course, the famed Dingle Dell before it is the Barry Sheen named Sheen curve through turn number 7. And then the next to come up is going to be the left-hander, which is the Stirling's Bend, which then leads you back onto the straight that takes you onto the Clearways part of the circuit, and of course back onto the Indy track. So first time to show is a 1:22.072. Don't read too much into that. That's way off the pace relative to what the cars were doing in free practice sessions, but Augusto Farfus tops the timing chart, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen at the moment. Now, the little light bars on the graphics that you can see, purple means better than anyone, green means personal best, and if it's white, it's not an improvement from previous efforts out there in qualifying. So a new set of boots going onto the Robin Freins car. So Robin Freins then, the Audi driver, whose best finish so far came in P5. He's the first race at Zandvoort, his home circuit, of course, last time we were out with DTM. So we're watching Augusto Farfus, who, sure enough, has brought 4 seconds out of that time, and he's banked a 1:18.707. Augusto Farfus, to be fair, has not had a brilliant racing season. His best finish, a P5 in the second race at Zandvoort. Pascal Wehrlein now going quicker than anyone through Sector 1. You can see from the pink indicator on the blocks on his graphics. So Farfus Auer, Joel Eriksson, Edo Mortara, René Rast, Bruno Spengler, and now Jamie Green goes fifth fastest. Another one of the British drivers that's racing here at what is effectively a home circuit. So Augusto Farfus then, as Philipp Eng now goes fastest with a 1:18.676 for the BMW rookie into the DTM this year. Philipp Eng, it's not going to be too long before he takes his first win, I'm sure of that. Will it come at Brands Hatch? Well, time will tell. As always, the top 5-6 drivers are split by mere tenths. As that qualifying continues, we've got a yellow flag in turn number 1. Who has gone wide in turn 1? Who is off in turn 1? Well, no one is off. The yellow flag gets lifted and we go back to green everywhere once again. So Augusto Farfus then, 1:18.505. We're on board with Philipp Eng now. The BMW rookie, Lucas Auer, has gone better than anyone through Sector 1 and Sector 2. Here he is, Lucas Auer, the Mercedes driver, the young Austrian. As he heads towards the timing line, he goes from P5 to P1, a 1:18.255, taking 2.5 tenths out of the previous best time. Brian, when you're talking about 2.5 tenths in DTM, that's a huge margin.
Yes, absolutely massive. You're talking about just a few hundredths of a second between these cars at the end of qualifying, so that kind of advantage this early on is very significant. Just going to be interesting to see whether anyone else can close that one up.
Well, Lucas Auer, who's had a pair of P2s, says there's a problem with the Gary Paffett car there. You can see there in replay, and that's why we have that yellow flag, because Paffett ran wide out into the sand. And as you can see, he kept his foot in, but he did glance the barriers as well, the tyre barriers. On board, you can see as he's trying to control that car. Well, that's not the start that he would have liked in the qualifying session. So whether that has meant that the damage sustained to the Gary Paffett car means that he's not going to be out again, because he was P7 when that happened with a time of 1:18.791. Now, the engineers will be straight onto that car, of course. The HWA team and Robert Sattler, of course, who's Gary Paffett's chief engineer, straight onto that car, because at the moment his P7 of a 1:18.791 is probably vulnerable with, what have we got? Still 12.5 minutes of this qualifying session to do. Lucas Auer, though, cometh the man, cometh the hour, 1:18.255. That's been used once or twice before, I can assure you, but he's top of the standings. And here comes Jamie Green then, the British driver. Of course, made his racing debut here in the UK many, many years ago as a kid in a little oval formula called Mini Stocks, which Brian will know very, very well. But Jamie Green, of course, has become a supremely successful racing driver. First stint in DTM, of course, with Mercedes-Benz, now with Audi. Mike Rockenfeller in car number 99 then goes a personal best from Sector 1, but he is languishing down there P18 at the moment, so a PB is not anything to get too excited about. It's the purple sectors that we like to see, and Jamie Green has just set one of those going through Sector number 1. Auer, Farfus, Eng and Wehrlein are the top 4 at the moment. So Rocky then with 2 PBs. Beginning to look a bit better for the Audi driver as he heads now towards the timing beam to break that. Where will Mike Rockenfeller launch himself? Well, he launches himself 5 positions up to P13. Still needs to find a little bit more pace out of the Audi. Of course, Audi have very much been on the back foot during DTM this year with the 30% reduction in aero, which I have to say, whilst it's hurt Audi, Brian, what it has done has meant that the whole show, the whole DTM racing has been closer and perhaps more physical than ever before, because where previously you lose one of those little aero flicks on the car and your race is over, that isn't the case now. And therefore, take your mind back to the opening round at Hockenheim with Timo Glock and Gary Paffett and also Mike Rockenfeller all barging. It was great to watch.
Yeah, it was brilliant racing on that first round. And it's definitely the reduction in the aerodynamics and also the mechanical grip as well has really closed that field up, and it's exactly what we wanted. There's not one make that's dominating. It's what we want. It's close racing, isn't it?
Yes, I suppose if there is a domination, it has gone the way of Mercedes-Benz, who have taken the most benefit out of that aero reduction. And of course, the big loser has been Audi, who were aero, who had the aero supremacy, if you like. So And of course, with the cars in homologation, there's very little you can do to play catch-up once something has been changed. But of course, they are quietly working about everything, and well, you can see how quietly they're working about everything, because at the moment we have an Audi P3, and it is Robin Freins who's just set that. We can see him centre screen now in the number 4 car. Robin Freins has gone third fastest with a 1:18.530. So it is just tenths that split from P1 to P15. What about that? From 1:18.255 to 1:18.964 from P1 to P15. That's how close it is in DTM. And we're watching the Nico Muller car at the moment. Lucas Auer remains at the top of the chart. Jamie Green, whose car is pushed back into the garage, is one of those out of the 118s. He's a 1:19.119. So some work going on the Gary Paffett car, but it looks pretty superficial, to be fair. So hopefully Paffett will be back out for the final part of qualifying and will improve upon that. He was P7, of course, at the time when he ran wide, Brian. And just very, very quickly, look, as we see it in replay, he's into P11 now. That's how quickly it changes in qualifying.
Yeah, absolutely, and that wasn't just a slight rub against the barrier, was it? That's quite a decent impact, and I think they've got some work to do on that car. And of course, as we said earlier, the track's getting faster, so he's going to be dropping down the order as things go along. When there's such a small amount of time separating the cars, you can drop down so quickly. He really needs to get back out. They need to get that car sorted.
Actually, it's when you're on board, Brian, that reinforces what you're saying. It was quite an impact, but I think the damage is superficial. Look, the engineers are not, they're not doing anything major to the car, and I'm just hoping, therefore, that it was a full side-on impact, wasn't it? He glanced it full side on. I think if it had caught one of the corners, that might have been more of a problem. So hopefully all will be okay. Of course, all of Gary's family will be here this weekend, Lisa and the kids, and everybody will be wishing him well. And he comes off the back of a P1 and a P2, of course, at Zandvoort, which puts him in that commanding position in the Drivers' Championship at the moment. And there's nothing like scoring well at your home race, is there?
No, absolutely. But with that, if there is anything major that is damaged, they're obviously with 8 minutes left in qualifying. There's not time to do it, so he might still be trying to drive a car that has got damage to it. That might have parts that, compromised.
Fair point. Lucas Auer is the fastest man so far, a 1:18.255. As I mentioned, Lucas has been winless so far this season, which has really surprised me, but he's taken 2 P2s and a P3. Can the young Austrian find himself on the top step of the podium once again? But it will come at Brands Hatch. Well, there you can see the focus as he's looking at the data on the screen with just 7 minutes remaining. Lucas Auer then fastest, 1:18.255. BMW driver Augusto Farfus is P2, and then it's Robin Freins for Audi, who is P3. And again, the closeness of the DTM, it's absolutely brilliant, Brian, because we've got the top 3 places, and we've got 3 different manufacturers.
Absolutely brilliant, and that's exactly what we want, isn't it? And this is the calm before the final storm, I guess. I think with temperatures like they are today, the trick is going to be whoever goes last, really. The times are going to get faster as we get to the end of that qualifying session.
The problem always is, though, isn't it, that you're absolutely right. But of course, everyone will want to do that. So all of a sudden, and it is a relatively short track here at Brands Hatch, even though we're using the GP circuit, it's still only 3.9 kilometres. All of a sudden, they're going to be queuing up in the pit lane, and it's going to become a very busy place. And you need to find clear air on the track, don't you? If you're hampered by traffic, someone on an out lap rather than a hot lap, Here comes Pascal Wehrlein, youngest ever DTM champion in car number 94, of course, returns to the DTM this year from his foray into Formula One. There is Augusto Farfus, who's currently second fastest. Pascal Wehrlein is P6 at the moment. The first to show, though, is the number 28 car of Loic Duval, the Phoenix driver for Audi. Here comes Joel Eriksson then. Was with Joel in London a couple of weeks ago as he was doing some filming in London. The number 48 car is Eduardo Mortara. New colour scheme for Edo Mortara this weekend across his HWA Mercedes-Benz. Being held in the garage, as you can see, by the engineer there until the pit lane is clear and allows him to make his way out of the garage. Edo, who's had a couple of wins this year, one at Lausitzring, and another one on the tight street circuit at the Norris Ring. Here comes Philipp Eng in the number 25 BMW, who's currently 5th fastest. I had a chat with him literally moments before qualifying started, and as always, Philipp is cool, calm and collected. A super talented driver. Jamie Green, Edo Mortara, and here comes the man that is currently top of the standings in terms of this qualifying session, Lucas Auer, followed by Marco Wittmann, who is P9. So the cars then all out for the final 5 minutes of the qualifying session. In fact, we've got 4.5 minutes remaining. That's all. Who is going to topple the young Austrian from the top of the timing chart at the moment? Or is anyone going to be able to do it, Brian? I think you're right. A little bit more rubber will have gone down. The track will have evolved just a little more. Who can take the time out of that 1:18.255?
Yeah, and there's some very significant names in the lower parts of the timing chart. Actually, you look obviously at Gary Paffett after his brush with the fence, but also Paul de Resta, Timo Glock. There's some big names down there that need to get their skates on, really. They're quite a long way down the order. They've got a lot to do in the next less than 4 minutes.
Look at Paffett weaving from side to side. So too is René Rast as they cross the timing line and head into that Paddock Hill bend. Pascal Wehrlein on his way up towards Druid. So too Augusto Farfus. Here is Gary Paffett now. So the British driver who leads the Drivers' Championship then with a healthy margin of 148 points over 121. His British compatriot Paul de Resta, of course, P2 in the points at the moment, and Paul de Resta is currently just one place behind him in qualifying. It's P11 and P12 for Paffett and de Resta at the moment. So the time to beat is a 1:18.255. The driver's still on outlaps, really, because it takes, Brian, it takes almost a couple of laps to get those Hankook tyres up to the correct operating temperature.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyre warmers aren't allowed here, so getting it out on track and getting them up to the right temperature and not overheating things as well. You've got to get to the right temperature, get the brakes up to temperature as well.
You're absolutely right. We're on board with this camera angle that I love. It's the splitter cam with Jamie Green then. He's about to turn left and make his way up onto what is part of the GP circuit here. The graphics there you can see he's in third gear up to fourth now. The rev's almost into the red before he engages fifth gear. 235 kilometers per hour as they head towards the Hawthorne bend. And now it's the Derek Milner straight heading up towards turn number 6, the Westfield bend. No one at the moment is going green or purple in the timing sectors. And we have merely 2.5 minutes of qualifying left to run, a 1:18.255, the best time so far. And it came from the young Austrian driver Lucas Auer. So staying on board with this splitter cam with Jamie Green. And Jamie Green then, who has got the number 7 car of Bruno Spengler ahead of him, as we now look at Joel Eriksson, the young Swedish driver who also runs a bit wide, gets the car sideways. Big save there from Joel Eriksson, but he did save it, and just for good measure brings a little bit of the sand onto the track to hamper everybody else as well. Augusto Farfus has set a green in Sector 1. So it's a PB in Sector 1. It's significant for Augusto Farfus because he's already second fastest. So no one else, well, I say no one else, Daniel Juncadella, Gary Paffett, Paul de Resta, Timo Glock and Loic Duval are going greens. But all of a sudden now, Mike Rockenfeller sets a purple sector through Sector 1. Therefore, he is going to be one to watch with 1.5 minutes left in this qualifying session. Rocky, Augusto Farfus, his middle sector has been a better than anyone. He's already second fastest. Is this going to be a provisional pole time from Augusto Farfus? No, it isn't. 1/10 down. Paffett now goes purple sector through Sector 2. So Farfus, and now Gary Paffett has gone third fastest. So Timo Glock follows him, and he goes fourth fastest. So already in the closing, the dying embers of this qualifying session, Brian Oliver, it's all changing as Daniel Juncadella with a 1:18.069 takes very nearly 2 and a bit tenths out of the previous best time.
That's a massive amount to be taken at this late on in the session. Going to take a bit of beating, that is. Also good to see that Paffett's got back up there, although dropping back down to 5th place already. Definitely time's coming down now.
This is one to watch. Pascal Wehrlein, the number 94 car. He's got, oh, we've got a yellow flag in turn number 4. That will hamper anyone that's in turn 3. Wehrlein is past that. So Wehrlein then with a PB through Sector 2 to add to his better than anyone in Sector 1. So Pascal Wehrlein then onto the Clearways former oval part of this Brands Hatch circuit with 0 seconds left. The checkered flag is out. Anyone that's on a lap can keep the lap. Wehrlein improves 4 places to P9. Oh, and out is Timo Glock. That will be the end of the session then, effectively. He is the one that's out. So there you can see it's on the entry, isn't it, to the Grand Prix loop, if you like. So it's turn number 4, isn't it, when you come off the Cooper Straight and onto that GP section. So we're done and dusted, pretty much, because Daniel Juncadella and Lucas Auer for Mercedes-Benz have set the 2 fastest times. Then it's Rast, Eng, Farfus, Paffett, Glock, Mortara, Wittmann, Wehrlein. Jamie Green crosses the timing line, and as you can see, Timo Glock, who was 6th fastest at the time of his stoppage, is now P6, now P7, so he's lost 1 place since he was beached in that area. So Timo Glock then, as he comes off the Cooper Straight, the back end goes, and once the back end goes, Brian, you are but a passenger, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And once you're in that kitty litter, there's no getting out of it, really, is there? He's in there for the duration. And of course, as you said, it messes up anybody's behind him, putting on a hot lap. Their lap is done. So that kind of saw the end of qualifying the moment he went in there, really.
Bit of a damn squib towards the end, wasn't it, unfortunately? Yes. So the top 3 then, Daniel Juncadella, Lucas Auer, René Rast, are the top 3 in that qualifying session, as Daniel Juncadella then is weighed in Parc Ferme and takes his weight off. So Daniel Juncadella then a pole position for the Spanish driver. P2 for Lucas Auer. So the Mercedes dominance that we talked about earlier on, Brian, continues in qualifying here at Brands Hatch on the long circuit, where, of course, their intimate knowledge of the track is not like the likes of Hockenheim and Zandvoort and such like, because now that the DTM has returned here to the UK, the first time we're on the big GP circuit. All their experience, of course, has been on the Indy track, which is... It's been like a blast for them, hasn't it? You know, times of 40s and 50 seconds, you know, to sprint round there. But now, all of a sudden, on the long 3.9 kilometre circuit, it's a different story. And the guys have been out there and done a good job in qualifying, but those that have done the best job, Daniel Juncadella, Lucas Auer and René Rast, because they are at the top of the chart. Philippe Eng, P4, good quali from him. Good quali too from Augusto Farfus, P5. Gary Paffett finds himself on the 3rd row for race 1. With Timo Glock, P7, Edo Mortara, P8 on the row behind. Then it'll be Marco Wittmann and Pascal Wehrlein. So the front 5 rows of the grid look very, very tempting. Robin Freins, who was at the top of the chart earlier on in the session, finds himself P11. Then it's Paul de Resta, Nico Muller, Loic Duval, Mike Rockefeller, Joel Eriksson, Jamie Green and Bruno Spengler. The 2 big disappointments there will be Jamie Green and Paul de Resta, of course, British drivers. But when you consider that the pole sitting time was a 1:18.069, there are just 8 tenths that split P1 to P17. 8 tenths, Brian. Bruno Spengler was the one that seemed to struggle with a 1:19.385, but across the top 17 drivers, we are talking about tenths. I mean, that's an extraordinary achievement and shows just how close these DTM cars and drivers are.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And obviously it's a fairly short track, even on the extended full circuit around Brands Hatch. It's a shorter lap, but still to be spaced out by that little is phenomenal, really, particularly when you're talking about 3 completely different manufacturers.
Extraordinary. So Lucas Auer there in conversation. Here comes René Rast and Daniel Schuster to the right-hand side of René Rast then. So it's P3 for René Rast. So the Audi fight back continues. They, of course, the manufacturer that suffered the most from that aero drop at the beginning of the year, as really rather unceremoniously Timo Glock's car is towed out of the section there. It's just by the McLaren turn, actually. It's turn number 4, where you turn left and go up onto the GP section of the track. So Timo Glock effectively brought that session to a bit of a close. Here comes our grid for race number 1 this afternoon. An all-Mercedes front row featuring Daniel Juncadella and Lucas Auer. The second row, it's an Audi and a BMW with René Rast and Philippe Eng. Then to the next row of the grid, Augusto Farfus and Gary Paffett. What can the British driver do from the third row of the grid? Then it's Timo Glock and Eduardo Mortara going P7 and P8. P9 and P10 goes the way of two-time champion Marco Wittmann, and alongside him the youngest ever DTM champion Pascal Wehrlein from the fifth row of the grid. Then it's Robin Freins and Paul Di Resta, who I can't help but feel will be slightly disappointed from his sixth row start. Nico Muller and Loic Duval, P13 and P14 for the two Audi drivers welded together there, with Mike Rockefeller and Joel Eriksson going from P15 and P16 to the final row of the grid, and big disappointment for Jamie Green and Bruno Spengler alongside him going from P18. That's the way grid looks, and Timo Glock's car is out. Let's hear from René Rast now, P3 on the grid.
Yeah, so I'm here with René. René, P3, I mean, that's pretty good. That's a good outcome, because from here anything is possible in the race.
Yeah, obviously in Brands Hatch, qualify is always very important. It's hard to pass. So yeah, I managed to get a good lap just in the last moment before I was P15 or 16. So yeah, just one clean lap, and that was enough for P3. Obviously good for the championship as well, one more point. So yeah, good day so far.
And because, I mean, before we've never gone on the long circuit, on the Grand Prix circuit, so give us a feeling for it. What is it like? I mean, you guys didn't have a lot of time to do anything. You had the 2 free practices today, so what's the feeling for it? How does it feel?
Yeah, it's a very men's circuit, let's say this way. It's very similar to Zandvoort. Lots of high-speed corners, 4th gear, 5th gear corners, over 200 kph sometimes. So you have to work quite a lot in the car, and it's quite risky sometimes. But yeah, that's what we want. No runoffs, no tarmac anywhere. So that's what we want.
There are also a few blind corners, and all in all for the race, I mean, you guys are all on fire, and you all want to win this race. So what do you expect for the race?
Hopefully a similar outcome like Zandvoort. I started P3 there as well. Maybe we can have a similar strategy today and undercut some people. But let's see, podium would be nice.
Obviously. All right. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to grab, or rather try to grab someone else. Otherwise, Junker Deyer is there. Daniel, just quick. Okay, he's got an interview. So I'm just going to give back to the commentators and try to get somebody else perhaps.
Thanks for your hard work as always. So hearing from René Rast. It's really nice what you're saying about Brian. It's a man's circuit, isn't it? You know, you've got to be brave, haven't you?
Yeah. It's beautifully put. It's a very narrow circuit as well. And that's what makes it a man's circuit. It's quite unforgiving, as Timo Glock found out to his expense, really.
Oh, heavens, yes. Well, we're looking forward to the race to come this afternoon. You can see cars in the support series already making their way down the pit lane. Let's go back to Verena, who's in Parc Fermé.
Yeah, so after this exciting qualifying, we certainly are looking forward to the race. Sunny skies here in Brands Hatch. It's hot, so we're looking forward to a very hot race. See you in just a bit. Bye-bye.